What's growing on, gardeners? It's Saturday, November 25th, and it looks like the cold weather is here to stay on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Just a couple of days ago, a commenter asked me a fantastic question. They asked, is right now in the fall the best time to amend our garden beds for the new planting season? Well, on today's video, I wanted to address that, and I'm going to give you 3 scenarios where I believe right now in the fall is the best time to amend our garden soil, and 2 often recommended scenarios that I believe you should avoid because it's a waste of time and money.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.
As with most questions in life, the answer to the question, is now the best time to amend my garden soil, is a definite it depends. It depends on where you live, it depends on your climate, it depends on when you plan to be planting anything out in your garden. So let's start off with 3 scenarios where now is the perfect time to amend your garden soil. Scenario number 1, where you want to amend your garden soil right now during the fall, is if you grow in a larger earth bed and you intend on tilling a cover crop underneath and into the soil, or you're going to truck in organic matter that you're going to till into the soil. When you're tilling under large amounts of organic matter like that, it's going to take months for that organic matter to break down, especially now during the cool season where decomposition basically grinds to a halt. Everything takes longer. So if you're growing in larger earth beds and you like to work all of that organic matter with a tiller into the soil, the fall is probably when you want to do that, because you want to give that soil the maximum time to settle down and decompose all of that matter, with the belief that it's going to take longer now than it would when it's warm out. So you really need to prepare to wait a good amount of time this time of year for that to happen. So the earlier you can till in the fall, the better in terms of spring planting. The second scenario, where right now in the fall is the perfect time to amend your garden soil, is if you intend to bury kitchen scraps in your garden soil. And that goes for whether you grow in earth beds or if you grow in raised beds like I do. Now, over the years, I have made many different experiments on burying kitchen scraps, and what I have found is this. It takes roughly 2 months for kitchen scraps to break down when buried in garden soil, at least for me. And keep in mind that I live in zone 8B, North Carolina, where the soil stays biologically active throughout the winter because it doesn't freeze. It always stays some degree of workable over the entire winter. So if you live in a colder zone and your soil actually freezes, it could very well take more time in order for any organic matter that you bury in the soil to break down. So if you live in colder zones, you may need to factor in that it could take 3 to 4 months for that organic matter to break down in the soil. So right now it's late November. If you were to bury organic matter in your soil right now, it will probably break down sometime in March, and the beds will be ready for planting in. And if you're in a cold climate, that's probably roughly the schedule that you're looking at. So if that sounds like you, now is the ideal time to bury the kitchen scraps. And the third scenario, where now during the fall is the perfect time to amend your garden soil, is if you like to cover your garden soil with a thick layer of organic matter to protect the soil and rest your garden soil over the long winter. Some examples of these are if you want to cover your garden soil in a thick layer of shredded leaves or grass clippings. That will insulate the soil and protect it, and also allow all of those nutrients over the course of the winter to leach into the soil. Now, the reasons why we would do this is very similar to the burying kitchen scraps method, but because we are not burying that matter into the soil, it's going to take the longest period of time to break down. When things just sit on top of the soil, it decomposes very slowly because it's not being mixed into biologically active soil. So if you're going to do that, then it's very good practice to allow that to sit on top of your soil for the maximum amount of time possible. So if you like to let your beds rest all winter long, you really want to maximize the amount of time that that organic matter is going to sit on top of your garden soil and break down. So now that we've discussed 3 scenarios where right now during the fall is the perfect time to amend our garden soil, let's discuss 2 scenarios that are often recommended recommended, but now is not the time where we would want to do this because I believe it's a waste of time and money. And the first scenario that we want to avoid right now is spreading finished compost on top of our garden beds. Finished compost implies that the nutrients are immediately bioavailable to our plants. So what is going to happen if we take finished compost and we spread it all over our garden beds and we don't intend to plant in those beds for another 3 or 4 months or so? Well, two things are going to happen. Number one, that compost layer is going to be exposed to the UV radiation of the sun, beating down on that compost over months. And what's going to happen is that compost is eventually going to become irradiated. The sun is going to beat it up and partially sterilize it. And all of those great bacteria and fungi that you're bringing in to your soil, they're basically going to be rendered sterilized. And that's not really what we want to do. The second problem with this is you're going to be exposed to months of weathering. All of that rain or snow is going to pound on that compost throughout the winter, and your nutrients are going to wash away. So you're going to spend a premium dollar on this finished compost product that is ready to go, and you're going to lose the nutrients over time to natural weathering. Because of that, I recommend that you don't apply compost to your garden beds until you're ready to plant, or at least a month or so before you're ready to plant any vegetables in your garden. Now, if you've watched my channel for an extended period of time, you've seen videos where I have recommended that you cover resting garden beds with an inch or so of compost. However, I only do that on garden beds where I'm going to plant in them within about 2 months or less. And when I do that, I also place either a very thick layer of mulch on top of that compost in order to protect it and not allow any of the nutrients to be bleached by the sun or wash away for the rain, or I tarp the entire bed with a tarp. If you're going to apply compost now, it's very important that you tarp it. That way it won't wash away and it won't get solarized and irradiated throughout the winter. Because you may think that the sun is not very strong right now, but if you stare into it, it will still hurt. And let me tell you, beating down on your unprotected garden soil throughout the entire winter is really damaging to it. More on that later. Now, the scenario I just laid out applies to finished compost only. If you were to spread something like raw manure on top of your garden beds, then you can apply that right now, because it will take several months for that manure to break down and feed your soil, especially now during the cold season when the soil is less biologically active. So feel free to spread manure if you have access to it right now. This applies only to finished compost. You should save the expensive premium finished compost for when planting is imminent. The second scenario that I believe you should avoid at all costs is one that I see recommended all the time this time of year, and that is spreading finished fertilizer products on top of your garden soil. I think this is a terrible idea and a waste of money, and here's why. I literally cringe when I see fertilizer products like these being recommended to place on our empty garden soil in the fall for planting later, months later in spring. I can actually hear my money being flushed down the drain. Yes, it is true that organic granular fertilizers such as these are not immediately bioavailable to plants in their raw form. They have to be mixed into the garden soil, and they need to break down over time to release their nutrients. However, they are granulated in this form for a reason. It's because it maximizes the surface area, and they still begin breaking down relatively quickly. So the day that I apply this fertilizer, it may not work, it may be inert, but within a couple weeks, it's going to start breaking down. So when you see gardening videos that are recommending that we place this 3 or 4 months before we plant anything out in our raised garden beds, what is going to happen? Well, these garden beds drain very well. So they're going to get rained on all throughout the winter, and all of those nutrients are just going to wash out of the raised garden beds. I'm going to be buying this very expensive garden fertilizer, and it's not going to be there when I go to plant in these garden beds during March or April. For that reason, I only recommend that you apply expensive fertilizers like these in a targeted fashion. I only use these granular organic fertilizers in 2 scenarios: at transplant and a couple of weeks after transplant, in order to keep the nutrient train running, as they say. So if I were to start these plants from transplant and move them out from seed cells into the ground, then I would place probably about 2 teaspoons of fertilizer underneath all of the transplants. It's inert in its raw form, but it will begin breaking down over a couple of weeks, and it will feed these individual vegetables for a couple of weeks, if not a couple of months. And then every 2 or 3 weeks or so, you can put another 1 to 2 teaspoons around the base of each individual plant, and then scratch it into the soil, bury it under some mulch, and water it in very well. And that is how you correctly use these fertilizers. They are very expensive. We shouldn't be broadcast spreading them all around our gardens. We shouldn't be fertilizing soil where nothing is growing. We should only be targeting the individual plants because they cost so much money. Otherwise, we're really just abusing them and we're going to go broke. Now, that being said, I have also seen videos where some gardeners have recommended using meal-based products like chicken feed meals, like alfalfa meal, to nutrify your garden soil as an alternative to these completed commercial fertilizer products that are much more expensive. And the idea is that these meal products, well, they're a lot less money, but they still contain all of the organic matter that will break down and feed your garden soil over time. Well, I think that is a really good idea. I think it's still way too early in order to apply them. You don't need 3 or 4 months for alfalfa meal or other meal-based products to break down. It's November right now. If I'm going to plant in my garden soil in March, it's way too early in my opinion. You would want to apply something like that 30 to 60 days before you intend to plant anything in the soil. That should be enough time for a lot of these products to really get breaking down for you. And of course, when you do apply them to your soil, if this is your intention, please cover them in some type of mulch layer or place a tarp over the area that you applied these meals, because they will wash away over time. 1 to 2 months is a long time to leave something sitting on top of your garden soil. It will wash away, or it will get bleached by the sun if you don't protect it. But no matter what you decide, I want to leave you with this one pro tip. No matter if you're going to amend your soil today, tomorrow, a month from now, or 3 months from now, please protect your garden soil. Do not let any of your garden soil be exposed to the sun and the rain all throughout the winter time. Even though the sun is much weaker, when it's beating on top of your soil for months on end, it will sterilize the top layer of your soil. So please protect it. Protect it with some type of mulch layer. I don't care if it's chopped up leaves, I don't care if it's cut grass clippings, I don't care if it's a shredded natural hardwood bark mulch like what I'm using in this garden bed right here. I don't care if you cover the soil with a tarp. Just protect it. Do not let it be exposed to the elements for months on end. That will damage your soil and harm your soil's microbiome. And that right there is my take on the do's and don'ts of amending your garden soil for the next growing season. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I featured in this video or that I use in real life in my garden, everything is linked down below in my Amazon storefront link in the video description. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon link, and you'll see everything I use and recommend in real life. And while you're there, check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. I made special homemade treats for everybody. We made healthy crustless pumpkin pie, which is just regular pumpkin pie but without the crust. And then we reserved some plain batter for Dale that just has canned pumpkin with cinnamon and eggs, no nutmeg, no added sugar, except for a tablespoon of sweetened condensed milk. And then we put some of just a little drizzle of organic bourbon barrel maple syrup. Dale's gonna be so excited. Look at him. He is lipping. Oh boy, buddy. All right, buddy, you have to tell me how good this is on a scale of 1 to 10, okay? Wait. Very good, okay. Let us know. Is it Dale approved?
That's a 12.
Is that a 10 out of 10? Highly recommend? Yay!
Don't forget to leave a review, Dale.
Yeah, let us know. 5 stars on Google.